So welcome to our third screening of episodes of Crisis at Compassion. I'm Kendall Mobley, and my grant team has been putting these episodes together. As part of our grant team, we've worked with MeckMIN and LeDayne McLeese Polaski, who is the executive director of MeckMIN, and she's with us today. Welcome, LeDayne. Glad that you're here.
Thank you.
And one of the students that worked with our team is Iyanla Parsonlaw, who is also on the call. I see she's muted. So Iyanla, please unmute your microphone so you can say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good day.
You're welcome. Hi.
And so Iyanla has done great work for us this semester, and she's actually going to be one of my interns in my next grant project, which is called Faith in the Vaccine Ambassador. She's going to be one of 4 JCSU students going out into the community this summer to help educate people about the vaccine and hopefully reduce vaccine hesitancy. So I'm looking forward to working with her on that project as well. That's also being funded through Interfaith Youth Corps, just as this grant project was. I don't see Exodus Moon on the call yet. He said he thought he could make it, but he had a lot of things going on. So Exodus is our other student intern on this project, and several of the interviews in this episode today are his work. And so he's done really excellent work. Graduating senior, so really busy. Also on our panel today is Dr. Erin DiCesare. She currently serves as the chair of Interdisciplinary Studies, Religion, and Philosophy here at Johnson C. Smith, and she's an associate professor of interdisciplinary studies. Her major research areas are in the fields of gender and sexuality studies and mass media and popular culture. Currently, her research is focused on the imperialist nature of baseball and sports in a broad sense, and the current social reactions to the social justice movements that have been supported by Major League Baseball and various players. Welcome, Dr. DiCesare.
Thank you for having me.
And Jasleen Kohli is an assistant professor of Spanish in the Department of Languages and Literature and Rhetoric and Culture at Johnson C. Smith University. She holds a PhD in 20th century Spanish and Mexican literature from the University of California, Riverside. Her recent work explores the interplay of utopian spaces and dystopic realities in Latino literature. Dr. Kohli, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So just a quick word about this episode. This episode, we talk with several different people. We talk with 6 different folks who come from 5 different religious traditions. And we just basically asked them, oh, here comes X. Hey, X, welcome. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
I was already bragging on you and saying that you're a graduating senior, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So this episode, we just give folks a chance to talk about how they, in their work, how they have responded to the pandemic and what motivates them in their work. And it's as simple as that. And I think it's a really interesting discourse. Let me begin with Dr. Kohli. Dr. Kohli, would you like to talk about your kind of first blush response to this episode?
So I had the opportunity to attend the other 2 events or the talks organized by Dr. Mobley. And I kind of find many recurring themes between these conversations that we have been having. And I'm going to go back and refer to something Dr. Nadiri said, and he talked about the importance of creating spaces within the immigrant community. And I believe it was him who brought up the concept of dua, or a prayer that's sent out to bring communities together. And I'm also reminded of what our friend Hannah Hassan, I believe she talked the last time, she reminded us about taking experiences of faith and whatever faith means to each one of us, and then helping those experiences, helping them shape us in the world, take those experiences and translate them into action. And a couple of other themes that I felt were recurring within this, this video that we saw and these conversations that you had with different leaders from these very interesting communities were concepts of identity and spaces. And I'm particularly intrigued by the whole plethora of spaces that we're talking about. And I know we've had to reimagine our spaces, and we've had to reimagine a sense of community, wherein the spaces or the communities used to be the traditional places of worship, but we've had to reorganize ourselves, reimagine these spaces. And I think it's really interesting to see how these spaces have helped us kind of recreate or reassess our identity as a community, or different communities, or different religious or faith groups. Particularly interesting to me was the sense of identity. And that's something that that has special significance for me today, because as Mr. Pavanjeet Singh pointed out, and he talked about the flag again, an interesting example of a space. Today marks, and Dr. Mobley, this has been wonderfully organized. It couldn't be more opportune, because today marks the anniversary of the establishment of the group of people called the Khalsa that Mr. Pavanjeet Singh referred to. And so today was the day about 322 to 325 years ago, when the flag was reimagined, and this group of people were kind of, so to say, had a birthday where were recreated, this community was recreated. So it's a very significant day for the Sikh community, and it marks a huge day of celebration. So it's really interesting for me to have an opportunity to talk about these things on a day like today. Just some initial things I wanted to talk about. This was a pleasure to watch.
Well, thank you so very much. Dr. DiCesare, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I have tons of notes from when I watched it previously, and again to now. And I keep going back to this idea that for all the bad that the pandemic has given us, one thing that was prevalent specifically in this episode and the previous one was that it forced us to slow down and realize, and this was touched upon by many in this episode, is that it forced us to slow down and see how we really impact and affect each other, and how that interdependent web that was mentioned really plays out in our communities, and how important that web is. And there is no shame, because everybody has worth and dignity, and we treat them like that. So going back to, how do we give back to the community? How do we make people understand that it's okay to ask for help? And this was a very difficult thing for a lot of people that lost their jobs during COVID. And then they started realizing there's people who live like this every day in our community. So what happens when I get back on my feet? What do I do to continue my community efforts? And one thing that I noted was for Pour No More, when he makes this comment of, it was just kind of his intention to kind of help his community, and then it became something bigger. He didn't expect it to be something. And I wrote down, sometimes the movement becomes bigger than an intention, and you intend to help, and that's Christ going, here, it's more than that, and just almost forcefully giving you that push to saying, this is the massive impact that you can have, and this is why it becomes really important. And I think it made everybody painfully aware of the fact that we have people who rely on these services daily. So the conversation of, how do we feed the children in the schools? We have a lot of children who rely on the free and reduced lunch. And the big question was, when school started to close down, was, how do we get them this food? Because this is sometimes the only food that they get. How does the community answer? And so it brought a new sense of community. And I'm noticing, just kind of looking out my own window and looking You know, there was a lot of cleaning efforts, as they noted. They cleaned the creek, and they're getting together, and there's a different form of connection. I am noticing more and more that people are not going back into their homes as the world is opening up, that we're spending more time in a community sense. I used to not see kids outside cleaning up, helping mow lawns, helping the elderly in our neighborhood, and now they are, and they're continuing to do that. And I think there was a really interesting push at my church. We always do focus on Thanksgiving and Christmas to provide meals, and we continue to provide meals outside of that because they realized just how much our community was suffering, but also broadening it and opening it up to the community of Concord. So we actually were serving more people, and we saw more churches coming in. And I feel like it actually has helped to eliminate this divide between churches. We're having honest conversations, not just about our religion and our beliefs, but how we can work together to make the community a better place. And as they said, you know, Christ is all about sacrifice and giving and community building. And I feel like this was the push to create that community building again, because we were so isolated before the pandemic. And while we're supposed to be isolated in the pandemic, we saw a different response in a lot of areas, which I thought was pretty awesome. You know, as they said, he didn't believe that Christ would be in the four walls of a church. He would be out. And I think that forced us kind of out. We did an internal reflection. I almost saw a response of going back to our religion in this, because that's where we learned community. So those are my first kind of initial reactions and ideas and thoughts. And I just thought this one really kind of just brought home the importance of our religious centers in the community, regardless of religion and belief.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. D. I'll throw it open to my team, LeDayne, X, Iyanla. All of you were responsible for these interviews. How do y'all respond to this?
I just say briefly that I mean, I love all the episodes, but I really love this one and how people are coming from all these different perspectives. And one of the things that's interesting is that you see everything from, you know, Aya Sudama talking about like that primarily her work has been providing spiritual care to people, to, you know, several people who are talking about kind of what we would call direct aid. And then Jay Leach talking about like, how do we change the system? And I really like having all those different things present.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of indicative of what makes a rich, a richly interfaith community, like what that offers is that there are all these different ways of acting in the world. And I think all of them are important, and I just love this video for kind of focusing on them all.
Yeah. Thank you, LeDayne.
I was just going to say that I agree with Dr. D when she has said about how, like, with this whole project, right? Like with interviewing all these different people and watching like how people have responded, it's like it is refreshing to see like different churches and people of different, you know, beliefs and nonprofit organizations all coming together as a collective group and having like necessary conversations. And I guess for me, like, and I've said this before, like the most, like, I don't want to say confirming, but like one of the best thing, I don't know the right word to say for it, but I guess one of the positive things about all of this is like there is a truer understanding that we can do so much more together than we can separate. And so that will always be my, you know, biggest thing like out of all of this, is because like so many people have come together who that probably wouldn't have happened had COVID had happened. Like, you know, people would probably still be in their, you know, perspective duties or stuff like that. But this has literally forced us to come together and for the better good.
Iyanla?
I basically have the same points that everybody else had. I think before the pandemic, we saw that in terms of religion, doctrine was a separation for a lot of different religions. But then when this pandemic happened, it came into the fact that it didn't matter the difference in beliefs or doctrine or conviction, but the main thing was to help. And I feel like that's a basis for everyone's foundation to believe in something higher than themselves. And to see that everybody came together, no matter the differences in something like religion, was amazing to be a part of.
Well, thank you. And it was great to work with the whole team. Let me just throw it open to anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment. Just jump right in.
There was another thing that kind of stood out was, and I was talking to my partner about this. It's funny, pre-pandemic, we were so busy and it was, oh, here's a charity that's they're doing the work. I'm going to give them the money to do the work. And now, even if we have the money to give them to do the work, now we're getting involved in doing the work. Like, we're seeing parents going and grabbing their children and saying, hey, let's go fill backpacks. We have a backpack program here. I mentioned this last time, and let's go fill backpacks. And it's getting them to understand what this is about and how a small ripple can, or small, stone can make a big ripple in a pond. And they're realizing, so we're starting to go into the doing instead of the giving, if that makes sense. I could easily write a check and, okay, great, I feel good about myself. And there's always that conversation, but there's also the conversation of what happens when I do it? What happens when I go and help and volunteer? And, the time effort is high. So I see this shift is very refreshing for me in a lot of ways. And I feel like they're starting to see more of that connection and understanding. And so I just thought that was another thing that kind of stood out. Like, while we still need the money, but we also need the time and the effort. And that shift was really big during this pandemic.
The Reverend Jonathan Coppage Henley, in his interview, said that the experience has been transformative for him and for his church. And, I think time will tell how transformative really it has been. But it is, this pandemic is a global event. And these stories that my team is telling, these are just a few local stories in the context of a huge global event. So I can imagine that these kinds of stories are being replicated all around the world in millions of different ways. And so I hope that it will be positively transformative in certain ways, to help people connect with one another across difference and help people become more engaged in their own communities in hands-on service and asking questions. How do we change the system? All of that. I hope it will be transformative. I guess time will tell. What do y'all think about that?
I was just going to mention that I agree with what Erin just said about the doing and not just the giving, and the fact that a lot of us have taken ownership of our actions and we're not leaving that work for somebody else. And I think that's particularly significant because we're beginning to see the larger picture here. Finally, we're still doing the work on a work front, taking care of our families, hopefully taking care of our inner selves as well. But we are stepping out and doing things in the community as well, and not hoping someone else does that. I'd like to say I've seen a few examples of that happening. I can't claim to speak for many places, but I've seen that in India. And I know there's a huge farmers protest going on there where they're asking for land reforms and reforms for farmers' rights. And the kind of sense of community and the kind of sense of giving that's happening there is truly something else. Doctors are giving their time and free medical care. People are giving their time, their money, whatever it is that they can. And there's a little citadel of sorts that's been created while the farmers go ahead and continue to do what they're doing. So the sense of giving, I think, it's a great example of that. And as Dr. Mobley said, we'll have to wait and see how how this pans out, but I think it's remarkable that we are doing what we are doing and that we are archiving it and we're marking it, because I imagine that there are places where not such a sense of community or such a sense of giving is as easy to come by. There are challenges, there are shortcomings, and it's just not, I wouldn't say that every place has had the opportunity to create a sense of community as some of the other places haven't. I like some of the other people said, I really like how you titled this particular presentation as doing the work, because it really has come down to that. And I think your team has done a fabulous job of really getting in there and doing the groundwork.
Thank you, Dr. Kohli. So I think that farmers' protest, at least initially, led by the Sikh community. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Yeah, so that's another connection.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else with a comment or a question?
Yeah, I have a comment. Just thinking about the question that you asked about, will this experience be transformative and sustaining? I think about the scripture that says faith without works is dead, and that's what this, presentation has been about. But I think having the tangible experience of acting and of doing something good, it makes faith come alive. And so I think because of that, it has the opportunity to be transformative if we remain consistent in doing these good works, And so this was just on a personal level, just really encouraging to me, being new to the Charlotte community. And I moved at the end of 2019, so right before the pandemic happened, and haven't really been able to connect with Charlotte or really know what the Charlotte culture is, because I'm from New York City. And so this is really cool to see just how different faith institutions are coming together to serve the community, and just see kind of what the needs are in Charlotte, and seeing that they have been, they are being met, especially within the pandemic. So thank you for highlighting these things. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that a lot of religious traditions have the idea of we fall asleep and then we wake up, and we fall asleep and we wake up. And there are different practices in each religion to kind of encourage us to wake up. So I think the answer to your question is, does this last? I mean, it depends on what we do with it. And do we continue to do the practices that remind us of what we've learned in this time? So yeah, I mean, it's we don't know. If we just kind of sit around and see what happens, well, then probably no. But if we, in our different religious perspectives and communities, think about what practices, what rituals, what reminders will keep us mindful of what we've learned, then I do think it will transform us for the long term.
Thank you. Fran and Michael Mastery from the Baha'i community talked about how they found new opportunities, right, in the midst of everything that was happening, while there were so many negative aspects and negative consequences from the pandemic. They found new opportunities to connect with their neighbors and to connect with people in their community. And I think that sort of creative vision, looking around the world around us with hope and with faith, and seeking out creative ways to connect with people, is really important, and especially in times of crisis. And it has to do with worldview, with a sense of hope, and I think no matter what faith community you come from, typically faith communities, religious worldviews, one of the things they offer is a hopeful vision, a forward-looking, hopeful-looking vision of life. That's a really broad generalization, but I'm going to stand by it.
One of the things that there's a quote that I learned in seminary that I've often gone back to during this time. One of the best classes I had in seminary was a class called Jewish Views of Death and Dying, which was taught by Rabbi Steve Sager. And one of the most powerful classes I had during my entire seminary experience. And one of the images that he used a lot was he talked about death being a plastic time, a time when things can be melted down and reshaped. It's not automatic. I mean, you have to respond in certain ways to the melting down to reshape it in positive ways. But it feels to me that a lot of our societal, personal, community stuff has been melted down. And the question is, like, what are we doing to reshape it into something different? So for me, that's a hopeful image, because there was a lot that was wrong beforehand. There was a lot that needed to be reshaped. And some things take a dramatic shift, change, crisis in order for that to happen. And I do see ways that is happening. So I think that's hopeful. Not easy and certainly not automatic, but I do think there's power in the fact that things have been melted down so considerably, and that we do have an opportunity of reshaping that we wouldn't have had without this crisis. I think Jermaine says so powerfully there at that very last quote of like, the only good thing about this crisis is that it gives the light an opportunity to shine. And I think that's true. And I see it every week in the work that we're doing.
I was going to ask a question.
Sure.
I guess as we think about this and discuss this, what do you think are the implications for our campus and our community at Johnson C. Smith? I guess, like, what are ways that we can, apply some of this to either our work or just getting more students involved?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I'm working on right now is applying to take a team of 5 campus leaders to a training that is going to be offered this summer to help us to do a better job of offering interfaith religious programming to our campus, to educate our whole campus about, the religious world in which we live, the very diverse religious world in which we live. So, one of the things I'd like to do is have a better better and more opportunities for people to learn about the diversity of religions right here on Johnson C. Smith University's campus. And I'm working to do that. Our partnerships with MeckMIN, our partnership with Bridge Builders Charlotte are going to be key partnerships for us, I think, in this respect. Right now, this summer, Bridge Builders has this program where we're doing the Faith in the Vaccine Ambassadors. Our campus is going to have, I'm the campus lead, and we'll have 4 interns working through that this summer. Several other campuses in our area are also participating in that program. So they will have each have 4 interns and a campus lead. And so, reporting on, what's going on with that through Bridge Builders and learning about what other campuses and what our campus is doing, what other campuses are doing, raising awareness. The next project that we have is we're thinking about doing building a habitat house using volunteers from different campuses and connecting with diverse religious communities in Charlotte to cooperate on a habitat house. Usually maybe one church or a group of churches will build a habitat house. So this is a different model, doing an interfaith habitat house build. So those are some things that I'm trying to help facilitate with LeDayne's help and with the help of the Bridge Builders organization here in Charlotte. but I'm sure there are lots of other things that we could be doing and ought to be doing. And so I'm interested to hear what other people may think about this, because you know, I want to incorporate everybody's energy and brilliance in this.
Well, I think it's definitely important to note that our campus is in the middle of a food desert, and so, and we are surrounded by churches on it's like every corner, right? And so we have faith communities that are present. How can we get our campus working with those faith communities to answer this issue of living in a food desert and not having access to fresh fruits and vegetables, affordable fresh fruits and vegetables, I should say. We have one grocery store, Food Lion, it's down the road. And then, you know, we have a ton of fast food places, and talk about health and nutrition, education. We are in actually a really great position to start that conversation, especially with the greenhouses that we have on our campus and the gardens, and starting to bring in, how can we work with these faith communities and enhance their food banks and reach out and provide some education in terms of nutrition and food and health and wellness, because it's all, you know, it to me, when I talk about anything that deals with faith, it's faith of everything, right? So you have to have the whole body, you have to heal the whole body. And so having those conversations and connecting, and then having those, you know, those connections and building a stronger community base regardless of faith, because as they noted, it's all about living the best way you can in your faith, right? And so there's multiple ways I think that our campus can start to really expand our efforts in that. And it would be really interesting to see how we can use our sustainability village and our additional greenhouses that we're getting to help our community, especially living in the food desert, and answering the need that is happening around us.
Thank you for that segue. The next and last episode of the documentary for this semester is in 2 weeks at 11 o'clock on the 27th, I believe the date is. And it is about the Chapel of Christ the King's effort to turn their church property into an edible landscape with community gardens and an orchard to address food insecurity in the Optimist Park neighborhood of Charlotte, and also their congregation's effort to organize a property tax relief fund to address the issues of gentrification that are happening in their community. We always run out of time. Thank you, everybody, for what a wonderful conversation. Thank you, especially to our panelists, and for great insights on this video. I really appreciate the support, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks when we talk about the edible landscape. And so we'll see you then.
Thank you. Great work, everybody. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great day.
Have a good one.